So, what if there was a secret to doing impossible things? And what if it was even easier than you thought? Oh, I'm so excited. Dallas Jenkins is going to be on the Crazy Blessed show today. He's a producer, director of The Chosen, the largest fan funded entertainment project of all time, like since pterodactyls were flying in the sky. He's going to be here telling us the secret to doing impossible things. Guys, I'm super excited. Today we have Dallas Jenkins. I know you've heard of The Chosen. Like, who has not heard of The Chosen, right? It is the largest fan-supported entertainment project of all time. And Dallas is the producer, the director. He is the big head honcho behind The Chosen. So we're going to be talking with him today. And Dallas, I just want to thank you for coming on board and sharing everything that you're doing. Dude, it's amazing.
Oh, well, I appreciate coming on. You got a great show. And I love your background. I love the Ferris Bueller poster. I'm jealous. It's great. So yeah, no, this is fun.
I'll send you a poster. Just
Yes.
leave your address. I'll get a poster sent to you. But this is so exciting because right now The Chosen is going into its third season. How incredible is this?
Yeah,
And
I'm wearing my three fish, our new hoodie and t-shirt, and it's 3 for 3, season 3, 3 fish. So yeah, no, this is bizarre.
yes,
Yeah.
3 is the magic number. That's
Yes,
so
yes.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So this, like, going back, I remember when my husband and I first sat down, we watched The Chosen, and we were like hooked, like
Mhm.
from the beginning, not just because it really resonated with us because we're believers, but the relevance of it, the humor, the like everything so real that you put into it. And I want to talk a little bit about going into this because this was, did you ever think, like, I know you had to imagine this, but did you ever think it would take off the way it took off?
So I answered that question this way because I think it's a really important point, and it's because it's more than just about the show. It's about, I think, my life in general, and I think about everyone's life and how they approach the future. I used to really think about the future a lot. I used to take responsibility for results. I used to care a lot about affirmation and numbers and box office numbers. I mean, the season 3 launches in theaters this weekend, and there was a time in my life where I would have been checking every day what the numbers were and hoping that it's successful, because if it wasn't successful, then I failed. And God took all of that away from me because I had a huge career failure shortly before The Chosen, with a movie that did come out in theaters and it bombed at the box office. And God brought me to a place where I genuinely stopped caring about results, genuinely stopped caring about people pleasing, about being affirmed, about what the Bible calls the fear of man. And I solely wanted to be doing what God wanted me to do. I wanted to make sure, as we talk about often, and that's partly why you see fish on my hoodie, is I want to bring my loaves and fish to God. And if he chooses to feed 5,000 with them, that's up to him. I'm not responsible for feeding the 5,000. I'm only responsible for providing my loaves and fish. So that concept is what allows me to answer your question in this way. I didn't expect this, but I didn't not expect it either, because I didn't have expectations. I really was focused on, I need to make a show that honors the character and intentions of Jesus in the Gospels. And that's really, really hard. And if I think about trying to please an audience or trying to avoid criticism or trying to get it big and successful, I'm going to be crippled, and I'm going to start making decisions that aren't in the best interests of the show. So that's a long answer to your question, but as I head into this weekend, I'm like, I don't know that I'm surprised, but I wouldn't have been surprised if this would have failed. It's really, I didn't think about that. I'm really focused on just doing the work and pleasing God, and then of course to my wife. But when you get to that place, it becomes a habit. I mean, you really do start replacing your need for affirmation with scripture. You start really working on that. And it becomes a superpower. I mean, it really is, because you really do. When you get criticized, like we get every day, you stop caring about it. And when you get praised and told you're the greatest thing ever, you don't focus on that either. It doesn't matter to you compared to getting it right, to getting what God has called you to do right. So I know I'm sorry that that's such a long answer to your question, but I can't answer. I can't say, yeah, sure, I expected this, or no, I didn't expect it, without saying that I didn't have expectations.
No, No, that is so powerful. And you're right, it is a superpower, because when you're talking about the fear of man, Bible says there'll be a snare to us. And so that idea of being on shaky ground, like, okay, if this gets the results I want, then I'm approved. If it doesn't, I fail. Like that kind of snare, we are setting ourselves up for this performance-based work, which will always implode, because when is it ever enough? If we put that measurement over our self-worth. But what you say, like, this is almost, I think, the secret to doing impossible things. Like when Ephesians 3:20 tells us that we can do exceedingly abundantly beyond, like, I think you have tapped into that superpower, is being completely divorced from the results. Like, as long as it's me aligned with God, that's my source, and I'm divorced from it, then, and only then, can I really do impossible things.
That's really well said. Yeah. And I think that it's a temptation for anybody. And you said it really well when you said it's never enough, because what happens is, let's say you're on social media. Let's say you don't have a podcast like you do, or a show like you do, or a show like I do. And you're just on social media for like, as a normal human being. And you start out and you've only got, 5, 10 followers, and then you grow to 20, and then you go to a couple hundred. And then you start noticing, like, when you do a post, okay, how many likes did I get? How many comments did I get? Well, let's say you grow. Let's say it grows to a few thousand. Or in my case, for example, I was at a few thousand followers for several years, and then The Chosen took off, and now on my pages, it's a couple 100,000. Well, when I do a post and I go, oh, this post now only got 1,000 likes. Well, there was a time in my life when 1,000 likes would have been a massive deal. It's all relative anyway. And so what you do is, by nature, you start comparing yourself and your accomplishments, the things you're doing, the posts you make, the comments you make, you start comparing them to the previous or to the future, as opposed to just really, like you just said, well, divorcing yourself from results. And I'm sure it's probably a temptation for you as someone who's got a show and you're looking at the numbers, and that's how you can measure success. It's really difficult to not care about those things, but to really establish a DNA, even with our staff and our team, of going, we are not going to focus on the numbers. It's not why we're doing it.
But it's so tempting, though. And everything that we're taught, we're really like kind of indoctrinated to believe, to focus on the results. Like, okay, when will my weight be the right weight? When will my salary be the right salary? And if we start to, I mean, that's really good about establishing a vision. But if that's why, then even when we get to that, there's still not complete satisfaction, because that's still kind of the works of the flesh. When the Bible talks about the works of the flesh, the works of the spirit, we're still gauging whether I will approve of myself if I'm performing or not. But I just love that idea of, like you said, with your whole team, not going to focus on the numbers. It's got to be tempting to want to, because it's how you evaluate things in the physical realm, right? Like everything has numbers behind it. But I think that's when God can really show up. Like, I think how he shows up through The Chosen, through the projects you've undertaken, through the work that you and your team is doing. I think it's just basically embodying what God can do through you when you're really a conduit. Yes. And I would love for, like, people, watching, listening, like, what would that mean in their life if they were just basically, I'm not going to focus on results. I'm going to focus on me right now, operating as a vessel for what God wants to do through us.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think it is difficult, because sometimes numbers are what allow you to keep going. So for example, let's say you make a show, and if you don't generate income in return, you can't do more shows or movies or whatever it is you're doing, or any business that you start. Sometimes if it's a ministry and you need funding for that, and if you're not getting it, then you can't necessarily do it. Well, sometimes that's God saying, I wanted you to do this for me, but it wasn't my long-term plan for you. Or sometimes it means, okay, when I first got called to this, or thought I got called, maybe I was focused on the wrong thing. Maybe I wasn't called to this. Maybe I heard the wrong voice. I mean, that's something that I struggled with when my movie failed, was I thought, it sure seemed clear that God was behind this. And now that it's failed, I guess I misread the tea leaves. I guess I didn't hear it right. Well, God showed me, of course, through, again, the feeding of the 5,000, that when Jesus was told that the people are hungry, he wasn't surprised. In fact, it was his fault. He had gotten them to that place of desperate hunger, so that he's the one who'd been talking for 3 days. So he got them to the place of desperate hunger where the only thing left was a miracle. And that really helped me too, because I thought, sometimes not only does God allow us to fail, sometimes he even orchestrates it because he wants us to be dependent on him. And he has a different definition of failure. So we may think, oh, I failed, therefore God wasn't behind it because God's not the author of failure. Well, I think that's poor theology, because I think that sometimes, if you look throughout the scriptures, God caused, allowed, whatever your theology is, however you want to word it, failure, quote unquote, many, many, many times. And what you realize is, okay, his definition of failure is different from ours. And all of this is always about drawing us closer to him and making us more dependent on him. And then sometimes he gives tremendous blessing, worldly blessings too. That happens. And that's not wrong. That's not inherently bad, but he says throughout, beware of it. Beware of the success, even more than the failure. That's throughout the Old Testament. Beware of the success. And the ones who had the biggest falls are the ones who had the most success. So it is just a life principle. This all rooted in your in your very good question about, hey, did you expect this would come?
No, it's so good.
Yeah, but that's it's been a real big, huge part of The Chosen is our DNA is we don't focus on affirmation.
Like, imagine if people could incorporate that just in their own life, and that goes out to their family. This idea, like we're going to be used by God. We're seeking first kingdom and his righteousness. That's going to be our first goal. Then all these things can be added. Like if we just I know it's counterintuitive to the way the world operates, but if we could just get that focus right, everything seems to fall into place. But I want to touch on something that you mentioned, is this idea of failure, because I've experienced that, like failures in my life. I always think, God, where did I get it wrong? And I've often heard, I didn't. Like that was a necessary, like if we can understand what if failure is a necessary part of the journey to bring us to the next place, then the worst thing we can do is let that failure stop us. Like if we could just understand, like, okay, failure happens, like whoever's listening, watching, you failed. We've all failed. Now, are you going to stay there or move further? What did it take for you to move further, move like beyond that failure to the next big thing that God has for you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's what season 3 is about in many ways. Season 3, the theme is come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Well, we spend a lot of time on the weary and heavy laden part. You'll see throughout season 3 that we address a lot of these questions and challenges and doubts. The disciples are like, all right, we're all in. We're following Jesus. We're following the Messiah. Oh my goodness, this is the best thing ever. Our lives are going to be great. We're going to now get rid of the oppression in our lives from the Romans. Right. Simon and Eden are going to now have wonderful marriage. All of these things are going to be improved. And when they don't, then what? And I think that's an important thing we have to address in this show, because we can't imply that Jesus came to earth and then just everything on earth just was better. In fact, one of his primary messages was things may get worse for you, especially if you follow me. And that's really confusing for the disciples. And they ask a lot of questions. And so we don't gloss over those questions. And some of that comes from the questions that I had when I was in my failure, and that this person felt led to share with me the concept of it's not your job to feed the 5,000, it's only to provide the loaves and fish. And I was able to get past the failure not because of new success. I had no idea if I was going to be successful again. I didn't know if I was going to make another movie or show again. In fact, I thought I probably wouldn't. But it was when I totally surrendered and when I was okay with that concept. And I really got to the point where I was like, if I never make another movie or TV show again, that's okay. When I was able to get there, that's when I believe God said, now you're ready for The Chosen. And that's when I was open to doing a short film for my church's Christmas Eve service. I had no goals with that. It was just for our Christmas Eve service. And it was shot on my friend's farm in Illinois, 20 minutes from my house. And while I was making it, I had the idea for a show, and I thought whoever makes this show will look smart later, because I do think this could be successful. But like, I didn't think it was going to happen. And oh, sorry, I hit my mic. So because of that surrender piece, because I was able to find joy in this process, regardless of whether the success came. And the fact that The Chosen has been successful is completely irrelevant to me, and hasn't changed 1 ounce of the work that we do when we're writing, when we're directing, when we're producing it. when I'm editing it, all that stuff. None of the fact that now there's hundreds, well, not yet, about 100 million people watching.
Yeah.
And as opposed to when I first started it, there were no people watching. It doesn't change the work at all. And that is just a foundational principle that has changed my life.
Wow. You said something so powerful there. You said joy in the process. And you had to get to that place where it's like, I can let go of success or failure. There's joy right here. Because all we have is right now. And like, if we're not finding joy in the process, where are we going to stumble upon it later? Like that's basically a delusion that I think a lot of people live by. It's like, no, I'm going to get to that place where I'm happy, instead of realizing if I can't be joyful in this process now, I'm forgetting what it's all about anyway. I'm forgetting why I'm even here.
Well, yeah, and you use the word happy because there's a big difference between happiness and joy. Joy is contentment and blessedness and pursuit of God, regardless of whether you're happy or not. And so happiness tends to be based on results. Happiness is the Bears won the game. I'm happy. The joy is regardless of the circumstance. I know my future with Christ. I know that I'm content with regardless of the process. Regardless of the result, I'm content with what God is putting me through. And that's why you see these people sometimes around the world who are being persecuted, something we don't identify with here in the States, people being persecuted who are like, have bigger smiles on their faces than we do, because they understand that definition of joy versus happiness.
And joy is a well, like happiness is that cup of Kool-Aid, joy is that well that we can tap into at any time. And I love that you just had the idea, I'll just do a short film for my church. And I think sometimes we get so grandiose in our thoughts and that we miss what's right in front of us. Like even when Jesus was feeding the 5,000, they came to him, they're like, all right, we got to send these people home. They're hungry. And Jesus totally like blows them away with like, you feed them. and so sometimes I think that if he was like, hey, Dallas, what do you want to do? And you're like, hey, I'll just do the short film. What if that was the critical step that was like, now you're ready. Like now it's just like, hey, you feed them. Okay, I can do this. I can do a short film, even though it's challenging, even though I don't know how, even though I'm not studying any results that I want to come from it, I can serve right here. I think everyone has that opportunity where Jesus is like, okay, you feed them. What can you do next? What is right in front of you?
Right. And he said, find the food. Give me some food. And that's what's interesting about it is Jesus could have waved his hands and had loaves and fish appear in the laps of everyone in the crowd, but he still used the disciples for everything that they didn't need him for. So he still uses us for the things we don't need him for. For example, we don't need God's hand to make loaves and fish. Like we have the ability to make loaves and fish. Now we need to make them the best that we can. We need to make them healthy and safe. But he's like, you do that part. You do your part. The truth that was given to me by this man who felt led to it when I failed was, it's not your job to feed the 5,000. It's only to provide the loaves and fish. Well, providing the loaves and fish is not a part that you gloss over. You do provide the loaves and fish. He used it, even though he didn't need it. He said, bring me loaves and fish. And then when he multiplied it, he had the disciples go distribute it. Again, he could have done it himself. He wants us to participate in that process. He just doesn't want us to feel responsible or to think we're responsible for, after it happens, the actual multiplication. I mean, if the boy who provided the loaves and fish would have gone home and said, Mom and Dad, you won't believe it, I fed 5,000 people today. That would have obviously been ludicrous. It's just as ludicrous for me to say, hey, look what I did with The Chosen. It's now around the world and reaching 100 million people. Isn't that awesome? No, I've made a show that I'm proud of, but the multiplication, the success is not something that I'm responsible for.
Wow, so powerful. All we need to do is what's next, just provide the loaves and fish, and we can all do that. Like if we allow God to do what he wants to do, then we can do what he's told us to do. Because I've realized the pattern of God working with man is he likes to work in cooperation with man. Like he doesn't do things apart from man. He's like, no, we're going to work together in this. And when we sometimes take on the God part, I'm gonna be in charge of the results, the multiplicity. That is not a burden that we're supposed to carry. I love that kind of like sums up the whole theme of season 3. It's like, no, this doesn't have to be my burden. He has said, cast all your cares upon me.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so powerful, Dal. So what's next for you?
Well, Friday night or Friday, well, starts actually Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
What's funny is there's nothing I'm doing. I've already done it. I've already made episodes 1 and 2.
Yeah.
They're now going into the theater. And now people just need to look around their local theaters and see if The Chosen's playing there. And if it is, to try to see it, try to get to it, because this is the way to watch it for now. It's coming to the Chosen app in December, sometime in December. We'll announce that eventually. But in the meantime, it's in theaters. Now, what I'm doing right now is episodes 1 and 2 are done, but I'm still editing the rest of the episodes for season 3 because those come out later. And I'm writing the episodes for season 4. So all of that, like, after I talk to you, this afternoon and this evening, the hand remains on the plow.
Yeah.
Because we've got to start filming season 4 early next year, and the train keeps moving. So while I'm not focused on the results, I am focusing on those loaves and fish, and they do take a lot of time to bake. I always try to tell people it takes longer to make the show than it does to watch it. So you got to be a little bit patient.
So powerful. Dallas, I want to thank you, not just for being on the show today, but also for just being obedient and pushing through, even, pushing through failure and being willing to provide the loaves of fish, because out of that, God's been able to just, I know it's probably beyond what you ever anticipated, but be able to reach the whole world with this message. So I want to thank you for being on the show today, and it's going to be amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy season 3. I think I can safely predict you might need a few tissues. So you might be able to kind of handhold your viewers and listeners through the process, because they might come with some tears.
Fantastic. We're ready for it. Bring it on. Tears of pain, joy. We're good with it all, right? That's what we're here for.
Good. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dallas.